Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're really happy to have you here. This is our third community learning webinar session for CDSS. And this evening's topic is managing your mental health. We know this one is a really important topic to the community. We've kind of touched before on some of the aspects of nutrition and physical health. But we know that the mental and emotional health is a really important piece of that too. And often the two kind of go hand in hand. So we're really excited to dive into that this evening with a bit of a presentation, as well as a bit of a community chat and an opportunity to ask questions. If you have any thoughts and questions that kind of pop up throughout the webinar this evening, feel free to drop them in the chat and we will do a Q&A at the end. So you can leave those in there for us anytime. And just to let everyone know, I think you probably heard the little Zoom voice at the beginning there, but this evening's session is being recorded and it's going to be sent out via email to everyone who registered if you want to rewatch it after the fact or catch anything you may have missed when it was live.
Hey, thanks, Sarah. I'm Laura Lachance. I'm the Executive Director of the Canadian Down Syndrome Society. And I'm going to start off the webinar this evening by acknowledging the land that we live, play, and work on. So although we're meeting virtually, we're all on land that has been inhabited by Indigenous people for thousands of years. For those thousands of years, First Nations walked on and cared for the land that we now call home by sharing traditions and telling great stories. So while our physical address is on the ancestral land of the Métis and the Blackfoot, we work from the regions of the Mohawk, the Mississaugas of the Credit, and I'm speaking to you from Collingwood, Ontario, which is the traditional land of the Anishinaabe people. Here, many others cared for their families and communities the way we now seek to care for ours. We seek to continue to learn, to recognize, and grow in friendship and community across Canada. And at this point, I'm going to introduce you to Dr. Yona Lunsky. Yona is joining us, I think, from Ontario this evening. And I'm going to let you introduce yourself and welcome you once again and thank you for supporting the work that CDSS does. Over to you, Yona.
Thanks so much for inviting me to meet with you this evening. We're a little group, so I'll be informal. I hope the things that I offer you answer some of your questions. But if you have other questions or other thoughts, you can feel free to unmute or put something in the chat. I'm not sure I'll be able to see the chat because I'm sharing my screen, but I know that Laura or Sarah can let me know what you put in there. So I'm going to talk for a little while, and I think after that, Paul's going to be saying a few words as well, and possibly one or two other people will see. So I'll just give you a couple of big thoughts I have around mental health. And I wrote here, managing your mental health. You may be a person yourself who has Down syndrome. You may be someone who loves someone with Down syndrome. And the truth is, the lessons around mental health are really the same for all of us. That's one of my big messages today. So I do work with people who have Down syndrome and who have other kinds of intellectual disabilities, but I also spend a lot of time doing my work with families, and I really do think that they are the same lessons, frankly. So that's one thing I'll try to relay today. So the first thing that's really important, there were questions of what could you talk about today? And I think instead of saying, this is what depression looks like, this is how you recognize it, this is how you treat it, this is what anxiety looks like, this is how you recognize it, this is how you treat it, I actually want to talk about all kinds of mental health and a few key things that sort of come up again and again and again. And I tried to put them in as very simple lessons. And the first lesson is really just knowing where you're at. And that's really important for all of us because we have to kind of know, sometimes we call this our baseline. We have to kind of know where we're at when things are okay. So we can start to notice when things are not so okay or where things are different. And I think that's important for everyone. It's really important if you have Down syndrome because I think sometimes our psychologists and our psychiatrists, people who work in mental health, They may not know a lot of people have Down syndrome, and they don't know you, or they don't know your son or your daughter or your brother or your sister. And they might see something and say, well, that's kind of unusual. That's not like everybody else. But if it's not unusual for you, then there's really nothing wrong with it, right? Or they might say, I think that's okay. I think everyone's like that. It's like, well, you know what? But I'm not usually like that, so it's not okay for me. So we really need to understand what our usual is like, and recognizing that everyone is different when it comes to that sort of thing. So this slide actually comes from two resources. One was developed, interestingly, by some young autistic people, and it's called Know Your Normal. And the other one was developed with Special Olympics here in Canada. But they really kind of get at the same thing. And the idea is knowing what it is, what your normal, what your everyday is like. So if something is different, you can notice that change. And so for Special Olympics, when we worked with some athletes from Special Olympics, they really like the idea of using words kind of like, what's my strong mind like? What am I like usually as an athlete? And then what would things look like if things are different for me? So I'll share 2 links after for either of these tools. You can see if there's one that you like. But it's just a kind of way of taking stock or knowing what things are like typically. And that means that when things are different, people can say, well, why is that different? How is that different? And then people can start to have ideas about what to do about that. Okay. Now, if you're a family caregiver, your normal is also really important to know. And again, you need to be able to communicate that quickly to other people. And so this is another really simple tool. We called it the Family Distress Scale. And it just kind of says, check out, check in. How are you doing? Are you a 1 right now? Everything's fine. My family and I are not in crisis at all. Or things actually really difficult at this moment? Are you in crisis and you need a lot of help? Just knowing where you're at and communicating to other people, you know what, I'm a 6 right now. Or like from the other side, this is my normal and I'm not like that right now, is a really important starting point for other people to know what kind of help it is that you might need. Okay. The second lesson I wanted to talk about is a kind of way to unpack. So it sort of builds off of this idea of kind of knowing our baseline, knowing our normal, but it's a way to kind of look at what are all the different things that might be going on. So if you have Down syndrome yourself, but even if you know someone with Down syndrome, you don't have Down syndrome, it doesn't really matter. These ideas around help or a way to think about mental health problems are for everybody. And I'm going to kind of break down what help means and how we would use that to figure out what's going on for somebody if maybe their mental health isn't doing okay. So this is a sort of visual to give you the idea of the things I'm going to talk about. HELP actually stands for 4 words: health, environment, lived experience, and psychiatric issues. And it's the way I think about it as a clinician. When I'm making a diagnosis, someone might have, say, an anxiety problem or a problem with depression. This is how I kind of work through things to figure out, is it depression or is it something else? And there's 3 links here. And again, I'll share these after. But one sort of explains this idea of help to people who might have intellectual or developmental disabilities. One explains it to families, and one explains it to people who work and who help people with disabilities, because we all need help. So I'm going to walk through what those different parts of help mean. So the first part is health, and it's really talking about what's going on with our physical health. So if you look at this picture here, you can see that the woman in the center, she's in some pain, right? People are kind of wondering what's going on there. And that's important because sometimes you might see somebody who is, it's not their usual, it's not their normal, they're not getting out of bed. And you think, wow, this person is, maybe they're really depressed and they don't want to get out of bed anymore because they just are feeling really unhappy. But there's a lot of reasons why someone might not be getting out of bed. And before we decide that that person is really sad or really unhappy, we first need to make sure that everything is working okay in terms of their physical health. So it might be, for example, in fact, this was a case of somebody, a man who had Down syndrome in the UK several years ago, and he stopped doing things that he used to do that he really enjoyed. And people thought, oh, maybe it's just because he has like mental health issues, maybe he's really unhappy. What was actually going on was he was having a lot of stomach trouble, just like the woman in this picture here. He was actually having a lot of constipation that had gotten worse and worse and worse over time. And, you know, he didn't talk about it because who talks about what happens when they go to the bathroom, right? He didn't know how to say what was wrong and what was hurting him. And he just started to get to be in more and more pain, and he didn't really want to go anywhere. And sadly, in this particular case, this person actually had an impacted bowel and an infection that was so bad that eventually he died because he didn't get the help that he needed. And the people thought around him, it must be because he's really unhappy. But really, he was just having a medical problem. So we always have to start before we decide something is psychiatric or something is a mental health problem. We have to make sure that all our physical health stuff is going okay. So big things to really look out for would be stomach issues, dental issues, really thinking about, and this is very important, sleep issues. So we know that sometimes with Down syndrome, you might have sleep apnea, especially as you get older. And so you're not sleeping as well. So if you're not sleeping very well, but you're going to bed, you feel like you're sleeping at night, you're not getting a good kind of sleep at night, then during the day, you're kind of tired, you're not interested in doing things, you don't have a lot of energy. Again, what does that look like? That looks like depression. But it could just be problems with sleeping because your breathing is not allowing you to have a sound sleep because of sleep apnea. Or you might have something going on with your thyroid, right? And so thyroid is something that can look like either anxiety if there's hyperthyroidism, or can look like depression if it's hypothyroidism. So we really need to check out all the medical things that might be going on. And the other medical thing, which I'll talk a bit more later about, is medications. So medications are great. They help us with a lot of things. They also have a lot of side effects. And so sometimes what might look like a mental health problem could just be a side effect of a medication that somebody's taking. So how do we figure out the H issues in help rather, is we see our doctor. So the best thing you can do, I think, if you're thinking there's something going on, you want to know if it's a mental health problem, let's start by making sure it's not a medical or a physical health issue by checking in with, you know, your family doctor or nurse practitioner, the person who does that sort of primary regular health care with you. And this is just a little visual showing the different kinds of questions you might want to ask somebody. You know, it's important to take care of your body. If something hurt, you want to tell someone you trust if you're not feeling well, and talk about new kinds of pains or things you might be having. And I'll share this link to people after. So after we think about all the health issues that could be going on, the H in help, the next letter in help is E. And E is for environment. So if we look at this picture, what's going on? The gentleman in the center's got his hands over his ears. And I think he's kind of distraught. He's having a hard time because the setting that he's in is just really loud. There's a lot going on. And he's feeling really stressed out about it. Okay. And so it looks like the person on one side of him is saying, hey, do you want to maybe put these headphones on because they'll be able to block out some of the sound for you and it won't be so terrible. Before we decide again that that guy has a mental health problem, we have to look at all the things around him, right? What is going on in that environment? Is that a calm place for him? Does he do well with a lot of loud sounds or a lot of other people? Because if the environment's not really supportive of him right now, he's going to have a really hard time. And before we say that's a mental health issue, we can actually make changes to his environment, right? So we can give him the headphones to block out some of the noise. We could also think about a different place that he could be, right? So somebody might have a really hard time because they're in a very stuffy, small, crowded space. And maybe they would do better if they were in a space that had, you know, more fresh air and more places to run around, right? Or someone might be having problems with their hearing or with their hearing aid, and they're getting a lot of echoey sounds where they are, right? So it's kind of really stressful for them because just the sounds are just too much, right? Or somebody might have been, you know, in a pretty familiar place and things are kind of the same, things are okay. And then there's a change in the environment because of a renovation or because something changed at school. And so now instead of going from the bus to a particular classroom, now you're going on a bus to a different classroom. And so there's a change in the environment. And some people don't do very well when things change in the environment. So we really need to understand that environment and think about how environments can be more supportive of people and more predictable, and look at those kinds of things. So in this picture here, it says questions you can ask somebody. Do you feel safe and comfortable in your home? You want to have a place where you can relax and where you feel good. And everybody feels good or relaxes in different places, which goes back to this idea of knowing your strong mind or knowing your normal. What are the kinds of things that make you feel good in terms of the environment that you're in? So after we think about H and we think about E, the next thing we need to think about if someone's having a hard time is the L. And L stands for lived experience. L also stands for life events. But either way, this L stuff, the lived experience stuff, is about the hard things that have happened to people. Okay? Someone might be having a really hard time right now, and we have to understand their story of things that have happened to them before. It might be something that just happened in the last month that's really upsetting, but it might also be something that's happened many years ago, right? And so we need to understand what's that person's story. And if we can understand that story, we can probably help them a bit better. So in this picture, you see somebody saying, this is our story, and they're telling their story to a doctor about things that have happened to them in the past. So it's really important that everybody be able to tell their story, that when we're trying to help somebody or understand what's wrong with them, we really want to understand what's happened to you, right? How can I understand things that have happened to you that have been hard? And by understanding that, how can we make things more supportive and better for you? Because we know who you are now. We understand the things that have happened that are difficult for you. So we know that, especially for people with Down syndrome, but for all of us, things that happen where we get hurt, where we lose somebody that we love, where people are mean to us or bully us, where something we really enjoy doing gets taken away from us, all those kinds of things, they kind of stay with you, right? And so our treatments, our mental health treatments, need to really understand that L, or the lived experience, things that have happened to people. And the last piece is the P, and P stands for psychiatric, or sort of mental health issues that are going on. So in this picture, we see someone sort of wiping her eyes with a Kleenex and someone just sort of sitting and listening to her. People with Down syndrome, just like people without Down syndrome, can have mental health issues happen to them. So it could be depression, it could be anxiety, there could be other things. Someone could be hearing voices or really disturbed about things that are happening or that they think are happening to them. And so our job is to first figure out, it's not a health issue, a physical health issue. We've done what we can in the environment. We understand your story or your lived experience, and all those things have been dealt with. Now we can deal with the mental health issue that's going. I just want to pause for a moment. There's some noise outside my house. Is it being picked up right now, or is it being blocked out?
A little bit, but it's not,
We're still able to hear you clearly.
You are? Okay, because I can get up and close my windows if it's really bad.
No.
Okay, so the third lesson is that there are things we can do to help people when they're having a mental health problem, right? So first we have to know what we're like, usually, know our normal. Then we use the HELP, H-E-L-P, to figure out what's going on. Now that we know what's going on, if there is a mental health issue, we need to think about how we can help people when they're having mental health issues. And I'm going to share 2 resources that I think are useful. So I'm going to talk a little bit about self-help booklets that have been developed for people who have Down syndrome and other intellectual disabilities. And I'm also going to mention, this is a second link here, to a series called Books Beyond Words, that have no words at all in them, but they explain a lot of situations that people go through that are difficult. Because sometimes I think when we see our story and we talk about it, and it might be someone else's story, but it's a lot like our story, it helps us put words to things we're feeling, right? And it gives us strategies. So I'm going to show you some examples of a booklet that's specific to anxiety. All these booklets are free, and I can show the links for where they are. So this is in the anxiety book, and it's looking at, first of all, the different symptoms people might have when they have anxiety. Some people with Down syndrome and without Down syndrome can have anxiety, but they don't know that it's called anxiety, right? And everybody's anxiety feels different. So in this tick box here, you might say, I'm having a fast heartbeat. My stomach is kind of, turning and all mixed up. I get shaky legs, or I start to feel like I'm overheated. My bowels are upsetting and I have to go to the bathroom all the time, or I'm really tense, right? So you have to notice, what is that anxiety that you're feeling? Where do you feel it in your body? And what are some things that you can do? So this is just an example of something in the workbook on anxiety. And in the same workbook, it goes through examples of things you would do to try to relax and deal with your anxiety. So it kind of goes through the different steps you might take. And it also talks about things you can do to get rid of some of the, like to distract yourself if you're feeling anxious, to help you. So that's a booklet on anxiety, but there's also a booklet on anger, on dealing with depression, and on helping people, I said, with sleep, which can be a big problem, and also helping people when you feel kind of stuck, when you're not doing too well. it can be hard to get started to do things again. So there's a book about helping to sort of get yourself started and do things when you're feeling stuck. Another way that we help people when they're having mental health problems is we think about medications. So sometimes we might talk to somebody, we might have some therapy like that way. And other times we might actually take a medicine that helps us with our mental health problems. And I could talk about that for several hours. I'm just going to show one slide that gives a few hints or a few ideas that I actually worked on with some families to help people think about medications. We came up with this word trial, because all medications are just things we try, right? Just like everything we do are things we try. And so we have to understand when we take a medication for our mental health stuff that's going on, we're just trying something to see if it's going to work. So for us to see if it's going to work, we need a whole team of people to look at it together. So it's not just about the person taking the medicine, it's also about family, support people, might be someone at school or at work who's kind of looking out and seeing what's going on. Family doctor could be involved, pharmacist can give information. We're all looking together to see if this medicine is working. And it does take time for a medication to kick in. So we start on a low dose, then the dose gets higher, then it might get even higher. And sometimes we see a change and sometimes we don't. And sometimes we see a lot of side effects, and the side effects seem worse than what we're seeing from the medication. So we have to slowly get off the medication. It's good not to go off it right away, but to take time to make the medication less until it's finished. And we might have to try different kinds of medicine. So it's really important when we're trying medications for mental health, what do we want to see that's going to make a difference here, right? So how do things look usually? Know you're normal, right? And now how would things look different if this medicine was working? We actually want to write down and measure some of those things. So if it's a problem getting up because the person has a lot of energy, they don't want to do anything, we're going to start writing down, how often we get up in the morning and we're ready to start the day. And then when do we start getting up later or not, getting up to start the day? Or if we think a side effect of the medication is the person might get really drowsy, we'd want to record or write down what's going on in terms of feeling drowsy and falling asleep in the middle of the day. If someone had an activity they used to really enjoy doing and they're not doing that activity anymore, we want to take notes on how often they do that activity and if they're starting to do it more often now that they're taking medication. So maybe they used to really like doing exercise or sports and they've stopped. Now we're going to notice if they're doing that. And really important, people don't think of this a lot, but one of the free services that we can use all the time is not just our doctors, are our pharmacists. They know a lot about medications and have different medications interact with each other. And they can help us think about when we're trying a new medication, which things we would look for if it's working and which things we'd want to watch out for in terms of side effects. The fourth lesson is that we need to be thinking about, it might be a mental health problem for somebody that you love, it might be your mental health problem. No matter what, before we fix or help other people, we have to think about ourselves and ways we can take care of ourselves and help ourselves to feel good. So one exercise I often do with people is I ask them to think about fall's coming soon and the leaves are falling off the trees. What are the things that take away your energy or make things harder for you? So what depletes you? What are the things that might be like emails or annoying phone calls or crowded buses or people telling you you don't know what you're talking about or people calling you names? There's certain things that happen that just make us feel really drained, like our leaves are falling off our branches. And this picture here I wanted to show, and if you've seen me talk before, you may have seen this picture, but this was actually an example of some of these leaves falling to the ground that folks with Down syndrome filled out for me at a session that we did at a conference in Banff. So one person said something that depletes me is getting no sleep at all. Or when people tell me what to do, that makes me feel depleted. Or when I'm feeling bullied, all those things really take away my energy. So it's really important for us to know what those things are that take away our joy, our happiness, and our energy, and to try not to have all those things happen. Or if those things are happening a lot, then we have to be kind to ourselves, right? And we have to get a little bit of help because it's a hard time and those things are happening. But first, it helps to know what are those things that make things hard. Why are you having a bad day? What are those things that are going on? So having those conversations when things are not difficult can be easier for us to think about those things than when we're right in the heat of the moment. And then on the other side of things, we can think about what are the things that nourish us, that give us strength. And there's a picture here of a little plant just growing, right? So what are those things? And here's a picture of what we saw, again, with the folks with Down syndrome that I met at a conference a couple of years back. They said, going to the movies, that energizes me. Doing gardening, listening to music, being with my friends. So, and what's important here, calling my mom, is that some people, like the same activity, you know, so for example, being on my computer, you know, for one person, like for me, being on my computer is really tiring and draining. But for another person, they love it, right? Or like being with friends, being with a lot of people, that gives some people a lot of energy, makes them feel great. And for other people, they like to spend more time by themselves. So being with a lot of people drains them, right? It doesn't give them energy at all. So the same activity might be good for some people and hard for other people. But the important thing is to know what those things are. If we want to take care of ourselves, we have to think about those things that make our trees blossom, right? That make us feel strong. We have to think of the things that really take our energy away. And another way to think about this is something I actually just saw last week, and it came from folks in the UK, and it's called 10 Minutes of Britney. So somebody had said that what I do, I love listening to Britney Spears. And you can see a little drawing in the bottom corner. 10 minutes of Britney sets me up for a great day. And the important thing here is we all have 10 minutes of Britney. So to think about, what are your 10 minutes of Britney, right? If we can find those things, if we know what those things are. So there's a nice, beautiful drawing at the top in the center. It says, someone that one person was supporting loves the wind on his face. This can be ignored because people don't realize how important that feeling of wind on that man's face is, right? So we need to know that's his 10 minutes of Britney. We need to make sure he has those opportunities. Okay, many of the things that we do that are 10 minutes, and if I had to listen to 10 minutes of Britney Spears, it would not do it for me, right? So again, know the thing that's important to you. What are your 10 minutes of Britney? And we have to help other people know those things too, because they don't cost a lot, they don't take a lot of time, but they make a really big difference in our life. And you know, when our mental health is not so great, it's actually much harder to think about what those 10 minutes of Britney would be. So that's again why we need a whole team of people around us, because other people might have ideas. And it's also a good reason why we want to think about those things when we're not having a problem, because it's something we can go back to in those more difficult situations. I'm going to share one more lesson and then I'm going to be done today. So I talked about how if we're taking care of our mental health, we really have to think about how we take care of ourselves. We're really important here. But there's also another lesson, which is that, and I don't know if you ever heard this expression when you went to school, when you're little, sharing is caring. But it kind of just came to my mind because I was thinking, you know what? When we share, when we're with other people, when we're helping other people and caring for other people, it actually makes us feel really good. Some people think, if we're taking care of our mental health, I just have to think about me. I can't think about anyone else. I'm just going to focus on me. And sometimes that's true. But sometimes what we need is we need to be working with other people as well and doing things for other people, because it actually makes us feel really good. And so I have a really nice quote actually and picture here. This is from Doolin Lobo, when it was done some stuff with CDSS and her mom, Anna, and they said I could use these pictures. So Doolin talked about what good mental health means for her. And she talked about waking up in the morning with joy, feeling good, looking forward to the new day, and how mental health was important. And she was helpful in us teaching a mental health course that was for folks who had Down syndrome and other disabilities. But there's her mom, Anna, and it's a beautiful picture of the two of them together. And I think sometimes we think, well, Anna's there to take care of Doolin because Doolin has Down syndrome. So Anna takes care of Doolin and Doolin gets help from Anna. But anyone who is in a family where somebody has Down syndrome knows that Doolin takes care of Anna, just like Anna takes care of Doolin. And we need to think about the things that Doolin can do, because she feels good when she helps her mom out. She feels good when she's supporting her mom. And we need to make sure there's opportunities for all of us to be getting care and also giving care or sharing or helping other people, especially in our own families. So that's my time. I just had a few slides with resources that I'll share with people. We are doing some teaching right now for folks with Down syndrome who are 40 and up, and also for families of people with Down syndrome. And I can share information about those courses. They're virtual. They cover a little bit of the stuff I talked about today and a bunch of other things. And then we have a number of different mental health resources that I can share with people that are all on one page on our website at CAMH where I work. So I think with that, I can take my slides down and end the show. and turn things over, I think, to our other guests today.
Hey, thank you so much, Yona. As always, it's a very interesting presentation. I love your style, and thank you for sharing the resources, which we will make available to the broader group who's interested in learning more about mental health. So over to you, Sarah, for our next introduction.
So our next segment is a bit of a community chat. Now, one of the guests who was planned to join us this evening, his name is Moses Latigo Odida. Unfortunately, he's not able to be here tonight. He is a filmmaker from London, Ontario, and also a father to a little girl with Down syndrome. And he was going to speak to his lived experience with mental health as a caregiver. And in real time, we're seeing the needs of a caregiver because unfortunately his daughter is ill at the moment and he's needing to provide care for her. But although he can't be with us this evening, I do want to share with you, I had the privilege of speaking with Moses and interviewing him for our 3.21 magazine earlier this year. And he did share some really interesting lived experiences of mental health as a caregiver and how having a daughter with Down syndrome affects that in a myriad of different ways, both positively and presenting challenges, as well as some of his film work, which is really beautiful. He's created a mini documentary series that's called Down. And it's about his work to try and create a community of Black caregivers across Canada, and sort of the commonalities that a lot of those caregivers share, although their experiences are all different. He's kind of found common threads through many families all across the country. So I am going to share in the chat both the link to the interview with Moses, and I'll also share a link where you can watch the full film series if you're interested later. And I know that some folks have joined us partway through the webinar this evening. So just to let you all know, the full recorded version of this webinar, as well as the awesome slides and resources that Yona mentioned during her presentation, all of that's going to be sent out after the fact. So you can kind of peruse that, go through it in depth, catch anything that you may have missed. The other guest who we do have with us this evening is Mr. Paul Saka. Paul is the CDSS awareness leader. He's out in Calgary, Alberta. He's worked with CDSS for a number of years. And he's going to be joining us tonight just to chat a little bit about his experiences with mental health. Hi, Paul. How you doing?
Good, thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us.
You're welcome, Sarah. So yeah, about my mental health. My mental health is being as a person
Yeah.
and being the way that I am and who I was, the things that I do in life and in mental health. I just want to say that in medical health, in my brain where that thing in the head, is where I have all of my mental health feelings and my physical feelings. When it comes to mental or physical, the thing is that feelings is absolutely is important to, let's just say, not just to the people that I love, but also, or that is to say, out to me, a long and short is strangers and outsiders. They need to understand and fully know about who I was and who I am today, and all the other things like my education, things like that, and all the important things about my life. For example, my daily life, my my early life, and the life that I have led into the point in today's world and in society. Everything I do is all good and all, but that is the key thing that that I think as a leader and as a person with mental health and physical health, both sides. I think that strangers and outsiders really, really, definitely need to understand fully about my life from both sides, really, because having to understand about my life is so that all people we can clearly see what's in the mind and in my heart to know that if they want to become a good friend to someone like me, they can. The same way with parents, children, kids, whoever they are. They need to know all about the young person that I am today.
Thank you, Paul. Thanks so much for sharing that with us. I know you're very big on telling your story and letting the world know who you are and about all your thoughts and feelings, which is a big part of why you're here tonight and a part of all your work at CDSS, kind of getting your story and your thoughts and feelings out there. Which connects, I think, to Dr. Lunsky's lived experience piece that she mentioned. I thought it was really interesting in the presentation. Dr. Lunsky mentioned understanding where your strong mind is. Paul, can you tell us about some things that make you feel really good in your life?
Oh, okay. Thank you, Sarah. Well, what is making me good in my mind is that people and things are good at knowing people a lot. The only thing about Paul Sartre is that when it comes to people like strangers or outsiders, well, they need to kind of know like what it is that I do, all the things that I used to do beforehand, and all the I should say all the early stuff and all the later stuff,
Right.
things like sports and activities that I do. All the I'm referring to the glory days of how I became the wonderful roommates I have had for the previous 4 or even 5 years, and all the glory days of my of how and why I got all of my previous gold and silver medals, all the pictures on the memory board that I have in my room here. All these things that happened to me because they are they are so very well and good. That
That's
is what I
great.
know about. I'm really referring to all of the goodness in life.
That's great. I know you have a lot of different sports and activities, so doing those sports and Special Olympics probably makes you feel good. And also sharing your story with people, it sounds like, and sharing your memories with people makes you feel good. Um, do you feel that sometimes you have big negative feelings and thoughts that are sometimes a little bit difficult and you maybe need to talk to someone about those big feelings and thoughts?
Oh yes, yes. Well, I wish I could talk to the parents, my parents, but they are always traveling a lot. I wish I could talk to them, but I can't because they're
Right,
always out there. And and when I do talk to them, then I say these things some- to them, well, sometimes, but it's not all the time.
right.
Reason
Do you have
why I
anyone
don't.
else that you talk to when your parents aren't around?
Oh well, there's also my sister and my some what I call some Kaylee, Wind, Elliot, and Ashley, and Adam. They
Right.
are my,
Those are your
my
support workers?
the community support, yeah, that's
Awesome.
right. But mostly I put all the I put normally what I do is I put out my thoughts and my opinion based on many things. Like the way that I have unhappiness or sadness or emptiness or well, it's like two things. One is the loneliness, the other is the emptiness. When you look at them together, then you know that you're looking into a very dark place up there, up
Yeah,
in
those can
the
be really
sky.
difficult feelings to handle sometimes, can't they?
Oh yes. The way I look at things is absolutely very difficult. Very difficult because the thing is when it comes to anything like a family like Grandpa Saka, for example, or Granny, or the other grandpa, I mean Grandpa Young and my grandma. My grandpa Saka and Grandpa Young and Grandma, they passed away, but the only person that is gonna be passing away very soon here is my granny. My granny is the last person to go.
Yeah.
And the situation now is definitely her time is gonna be coming to not to Calgary, but we will have to go to the funeral just because she'll be going. So,
Yeah. And when you're losing someone that you care about, there's a lot of feelings that come with that. It can be
oh
really
yeah.
challenging to go through for sure. Do you have
Mm,
any things that you do when you're having those
yeah.
hard feelings that make you feel a little bit better?
Well, in order to say, I guess to say that I always, I always enjoy my music or to write things down, things that I do things that make me happy, yeah. But sometimes I get, or it's not really about loneliness, but it's also about not having anyone with me.
Yeah, sometimes it's hard to be alone, especially when you have those big feelings.
Oh yes.
I think what you said about listening to music and writing things down, those are both really great strategies for when you have the big feelings and you're not quite sure what to do, and maybe you need something to distract you or cheer you up a little bit.
Yeah, that's right.
That's awesome. And do you find that speaking to a counselor helps sometimes if you're having tough feelings too?
Oh yes, I do, yes. I'm definitely will I will continue to do so. It all depends on how to. I'm trying to manage my personal life with my counselor because
Right.
I'm trying to like I want to when they say I want to kind of like get out all of the things that I know, like all the feelings out and all the other resentment, all the frustration, and by that I mean yeah, that is what I mean by anger and all that, all the. I think what I'm trying to say is my negative feelings are trying to get to the very best of me, or known as the very best of the best person that I used to be and was now. That is, I think there's just no answer after that.
Yeah, sometimes there is no answer to those big emotions, and all you can do is kind of share them and try and kind of move through them, right?
Thanks, Paul.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing. I'm wondering if anyone who's on the call has any questions for you.
All that. I think what I'm trying to say is my negative feelings are trying to get to the very best of me, or known as the very best of the best poster that I used to be and was now. That is, I think there's just no answer after that.
Yeah, sometimes there is no answer to those big emotions, and all you can do is kind of share them and try and kind of move through them, right?
Thanks, Paul.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing.
I just want to say thank you to all of you for tonight, and I kind of have my sibling now, so therefore I'm going to say farewell.
Okay, thank you,
Bye,
Paul.
Paul.
Farewell, Paul.
Good
Thank
night.
you.
Thank you, Paul. And Yona, again, our thanks to you for your contributions to our community and the support that you bring to us through the work that you're doing and your team does. And we look forward to working together with you again. And thank you for spending part of your evening with us. And I hope that you have a good night.
We do have another webinar coming up in October. If anyone is interested in joining us then, the topic will be finding paid employment, and it's going to be on Thursday, October 17th. So we will be sending out info on that along with the recording of this and the resources mentioned this evening via email shortly. Thank you again for joining us, everyone, and have a good night.